Revelation chapter 14. Verse 1, John says, "And I looked." John is an active participant. Y'all remember, this isn't his imagination. "And lo, a lamb." This is Jesus. This is the true lamb. This isn't the deceiver that we talked about last week. This is Jesus. "Stood on the Mount Zion, Jerusalem, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads." If you look back in Revelation chapter 7, verse 4, this 144,000, it's 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. They're Jews. All right, just remember that. "And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth." Another example, we cannot know everything about end time events. Some things God just chose not to reveal to us, this being one of those. Verse 4, "These are they," talking about the 144,000, "which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God." These 144,000, they're flesh and blood. They're sinners. This is not saying they were sinless. They are sinners. But what this is telling us is that they were wholly, completely dedicated to the Lord. And I thought this week, how many of us can say that? That we are completely dedicated to the Lord. These 144,000 will be. Verse 6. "And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven, and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters." These are two amazing verses to me. When it says in verse 7, "For the hour of his judgment is come," let's think about where we are in end time events. The two witnesses, they've already ascended back up into heaven. They were killed. The earth had this great party because they were killed, and they have ascended into heaven. The time, right here in verse 6 and 7, we're just, when it says "for the hour," literally, we are that close to the world being no more. That's how close we are. We're at the very, very, very end of the tribulation. Jesus, and we're going to see starting in verse 14, he's got his sickle raised, and he is on the downward swing for his judgment. And on that downward swing, he stops, and he says, "I want to give them one more chance. Just one more chance." He's giving one more chance at the very end of time to the same people that threw the party, that had that great celebration when his two witnesses were killed. This is the people that literally, truly hate, in the truest sense of the word, hate Jesus. And because his love is so great, on that downward swing, just before he just wipes the face of the earth clean from sinners, he stops and he says, "I want to give them one last chance." And he says, verse 6, "I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, Who is he preaching to? The lost, those that truly hate him. Verse 7 says, saying with a loud voice. I believe that this angel is flying low enough and is speaking loud enough that everyone that's alive at this time gets one last opportunity to hear the gospel. They don't have their headphones on. They're not asleep. They didn't get skipped over. They heard it. They heard it one last time. And then verse 8 says, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. I don't think Babylon here is an actual city. I think it is a system, the political system that Satan, the Antichrist, has set up, the religious system that Satan and the false prophet has set up, the very system that Satan has just said, I cannot be defeated. God right here says, I've got news for you. You will be. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, everyone hears this, everyone's been warned, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up for ever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Will a person go to hell because they take the mark of the beast?
Because they reject.
Exactly. You read this here, it says if you take the mark of the beast, but what is God really saying? Taking the mark is not what sends someone to hell. It's the rejection of Jesus. The rejection of Jesus means a person has no defense mechanism for not receiving the mark. And it says in verse 11, the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they shall have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image. There won't be a redo. There won't be a pause button. When a person stands before God and they're condemned to that lake of everlasting fire, it's not going to be, well, God, I didn't know I was hungry. My family was hungry. There's not going to be that pause button. There's not going to be that redo button. It says in verse 9, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, they were warned. They can't plead ignorance. They can't say, I don't know. God warns them. Verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God in the faith of Jesus. Because you don't receive the mark of the beast, does that mean you go to heaven? It's the same thing about receiving the mark. Not receiving the mark of the beast is just an example that someone is truly saved. The salvation gives them the ability to refuse to take the mark. Refusal to take the mark, what is that going to lead to? Their death. Very quickly. We've studied. They're going to have a big old X, the way I look at it, on their back, and Satan's going to go after them. Because they don't take the mark, because they don't worship him. But that's just a proof positive of their salvation. Verse 13, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord, get this, from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Those that die in the tribulation, says right here, There's going to be special blessings, special rewards for them that die in the tribulation, because it's going to be, well, we can't even imagine how bad it's going to be. But there will be special rewards for them. And then verse 14. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. I am not positive. I would not argue this point with anyone. I think this is Jesus. Might not be. I think it is. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat upon the cloud thrust in the sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Go back to verse 6. I think verse 6 occurs somewhere in the middle of verse 16. If this one is Jesus, truly. Verse 16 says, And he that sat upon the cloud thrust in the sickle on the earth. Somewhere between that coming down, verse 6 happens. And God says, even though you hate me, Jesus says, even though you hate me, even though you despise my name, I love you enough. And just think how hard it is. You know, you raise and you're coming down in mid-swing to stop. I think verse 6 happens somewhere in the middle of verse 16. And he stops. And he gives them one last chance. Those that refuse, and the earth was reaped. Verse 17, And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel, look at how many times different angels are mentioned here. And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud voice to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine, that's the lost, of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, that's the lost, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. Notice how many times an angel, another angel, another angel, another angel. We have precedent in Scripture where God uses angels to accomplish His will. Go back to the Passover. An angel. One angel. Go to the birth of Jesus. An angel announced. And then the whole host of heavenly angels were praising God. Think back to Lot. Angels went in to bring Lot and his family out. God uses angels over and over and over. And in the end time, when it comes to basically wipe the earth clean, once again, He uses angels. And then we come to verse 20. And if anybody wants this verse, you can have it. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. How do you interpret this verse? Is this verse to be interpreted symbolically, figuratively, or is it to be interpreted literally? I think y'all know by now, I try to take a literal definition of Scripture whenever possible. If we do interpret this verse literally, when God executes His judgment, blood is going to be about 4 feet deep, upwards to 200 miles long. How long is it going to take God to execute his judgment. How long will that take? Instantly. Not months, not weeks, not days, I don't believe, but in an instant. But rather than dwelling on that, here's what I've gotten out of it. Jesus does not get so fed up that he acts on impulse. He is not throwing a temper tantrum here. He's not throwing a fit. He doesn't get to the point where he says, just forget it. Let's just wipe the slate clean. We've already talked about in verse 6 that his love is so great that when it, and I truly believe it's breaking Jesus' heart to have to bring that sickle down. I think that's the last thing that he wanted to do. But because God is a righteous God, he knows it has to be done. But he doesn't do it in a fit of rage or in a fit of anger. He does it because he does love. And you can look at it and go, oh. And I think this is where people get it so wrong. God is a God of love. God would never do something like that. God does it because he is a God of love. And when we look at this verse, to me, what I'm getting out of it, it's not God throwing a fit. It's God truly showing his love for everyone. That's all.